Willie.
Boy.
Yeah, good by me. Yeah.
Perfect. Right. Willie, then I hand the floor to you, and your 2 minutes starts now.
Thanks, Matt Ping. All right. So this is about reasonable beliefs, and this is based on a claim that I believe I heard correctly at Will Kincaid's. I think, Smokey, I heard you say that I was an unbeliever and therefore I couldn't be expected to be reasonable. And by that, I took unbeliever as not a believer in the Christian system of faith. And so what I would like to know is if that you think that unbelievers can't be reasonable. And that's all I need for this section.
Okay, that was dead easy. Over to you, Smokey. That took
Okay.
40 seconds.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. I was
Coming in all right.
going to kind of do a little bit more of an opening, but I guess I'll chalk that into it. Okay. Whatever you're ready. Math big, I guess. Um, I think you may have misheard or possibly misrepresented. I think what I may have said, and it depends on what channel you're talking about, because I'd said something similar a couple different ways. But on one of the channels, I think it was Atheist 420, I talked about how atheists don't have a moral foundation to latch onto for their altruism or benevolence. So it was a moral argument. In terms of reasonable beliefs, I think the indicator to me from my foundational worldview is that generally, as I interact with atheists, they tend to have unreasonable justifications for their beliefs. In fact, it many times tends to be emotionally leveraged or emotionally dictated, and they tend to believe things that appeal to them most as opposed to things that seem to most likely be true.
That was also 40 seconds.
Well, I want to atheists don't have a moral foundation to latch onto for their altruism. All right, sounds good. Okay. I was
It's very low for some reason. Both Willie and Smokey sound low. But anyway, yeah, Smokey's pointing out right out of the gate what needs to be pointed out. We can say what's reasonable and what's not. We all do. We tend to think things are more reasonable than not. We have different reasons. We have different claims of what our reasons are, what's reasonable. Smokey points out we want the justification for that. He's tying in the fact that there's ethics involved. Both interlocutors will be implying why we ought to listen to them. So Smokey's got it. He's bringing it in right away. He's pointing out the moral or the ethical system combined with justification or lack of from the unbelieving worldview. So this is close to over already.
to keep it fair.
Oh, okay. If we're keeping it fair. Willie, back to you. This is going to get tedious. Right, go.
Thank you.
Right. My voice is higher. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. All right, so no, it wasn't that stream. It was a stream that you had it was right before your launch date or whatever. It was on Will Kincaid's, and this was over my liking Ace Theo, and that was really all we discussed. And then you began to talk about unbelievers, and you did call me an atheist, and said that it doesn't surprise you that an unbeliever is not reasonable and doesn't have reasons for what they believe. And so this didn't have anything to do with really religious. I mean, this was just a statement. It felt pretty open about unbelievers not being reasonable. So if that's not your position, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where to go then.
But yeah, if you're happy to do
So
this,
back
just
to it. Yeah.
let
Okay.
naturally let it happen. And if
All right.
somebody overruns 2 minutes, I'll just shout because the whole
All
fucking
right.
40, 50 seconds is going to get
Yeah,
tedious.
this is going to get tedious. I agree.
You two
Okay,
have
so
a
yeah, we're cutting
conversation,
things
and
short.
I'll naturally hit it back and forth. And if somebody talks for more than 2 minutes in a rant, I will just step in there.
Perfect.
So I do think there are indicators to someone's reasonability, or at least the epistemology that they latch onto to come to the conclusions or the things that they believe. So someone who happens to be an atheist, or for instance, even a different option that's kind of more on point, who happens to think that Ace Theo is someone who has the most coherent form of Christianity, it would cause me to doubt if you're actually using any sound epistemology to come to your beliefs. Because, of course, Ace Theo is a radical fringe version of Christianity that is roundly discounted by pretty much all of scholarship and all of the 2,000 years of the history of the Christian faith. And any universalist and or free gracer that's emerged, and in the old days they used to call them antinomians, or they were against the law. They believed that you could live any way you want and still be saved, and they were roundly condemned by pretty much the entirety of Christianity as a heresy, and always have been. So by adopting a fringe version of Christianity and grabbing onto it and saying this is the most coherent when it represents the fringe and isn't supported by any arguments or sound scholarship, is kind of like believing in young earth, because it happens to be a fringe part of the scientific community, and I don't think that you would agree with that as a good methodology.
Well, you said a lot there. As far as my thoughts on Ace, what the statement was that you weren't surprised because I was an unbeliever that I didn't reason well. And that wasn't really a statement on Ace per se. That was just, you didn't say people that agree with
Yeah,
Ace
I think
Theo are
if you
unreasonable.
are an atheist, and I know you've wanted to hide your beliefs from me because you think it makes a point, that's fine. But whether it's because you're an atheist or because you find Ace Theo to be the most coherent version of Christianity, I would argue in ignorance. I don't think you probably have any arguments for that, and certainly not from the argument of the consensus of Christianity and scholarship. So that would be a demonstration that you probably have an unreasonable methodology of which coming to your beliefs, which would also, I would argue, explain maybe why you would adopt atheism. Because from my worldview, of course, naturally, I believe atheism is a very incoherent religion that grafts onto non-foundations, unjustified.
Yeah. I don't know what the plan is here for Will, but he's like, "Oh, I'm not an atheist." It doesn't really matter. Smokey's pointing out. He's saying you're an unbeliever in Christ Jesus and the Christian worldview. So whatever you claim to be, I'm going to be able to point out it's incoherent by asking you a lot of questions. So I imagine that's why Will is trying to hide it and say he's not an atheist. But I mean, this is I don't know what happens. I haven't watched this, but right now it's hide the worldview unless he wants to go ahead and talk about his god Jeff or Gus or whatever he calls him today, he's outmatched here. Smokey knows how to do this. I don't know why Will would walk into this, but maybe something happens that's unexpected. Let's see.
Viable standards of naturalism and materialism that they can't prove, and ultimately deep down, because of its vacuous grasp to anything foundational, ends up leading to basically the problem of solipsism, which it can't possibly defeat.
So, based on what I said, though, about Ace Theo, you determined that I was an atheist?
No, I believe that it was likely you were an atheist from that, and then also the fact that many people that I talked to can
So they're going into a debate forum with the moderator to talk about the interpretation of what he said and how he took what he said. They set up a debate to do this. I guess they're calling it a reasonable discussion. Okay.
and others in our cult had represented at times that they've seen you and interacted with you and heard you talk, that you seem to be very atheistic in everything that you were saying. Now, I'm not one, like many people, to go simply off of how people profess to believe. Lots of Christians profess to be Christians, and then they don't demonstrate that they actually live what they believe, which causes me to know that their beliefs are a fraud. It's just a statement. They might want to believe, they might want to convince everyone that they believe, but when it comes down to the metal of proving their beliefs, they don't actually do it. It's like saying you believe you can fly, but if you're never willing to go jump off of a tall building, I'm probably going to question whether or not you actually believe that.
Do you think that Christians are more reasonable?
Do you think Christians are more reasonable from the confusing lack of position that I have? So, Smokey could, I imagine he's going to say, well, if you're not an atheist, what are you, right? It doesn't really matter. Smokey's coming from the Christian theology, saying if you're an unbeliever, you can be an atheist or an idol worshiper. You can have a fake God. It's still atheistic. It's still rejecting the true God of the Bible. So it's either one or the other. You believe in the Christian God of the Bible or you don't. And what the term that you use is not so important. But, now he's saying, what's his question there? Oh, great.
They might want to convince everyone that they believe. Fraud is don't profess to believe. Lots of Christians profess to be Christians, and then they don't demonstrate that they actually live what they believe, which causes me to know that their beliefs are a fraud. It's just a statement. They might want to believe, they might want to convince everyone that they believe, but when it comes down to the metal of proving their beliefs, they don't actually do it. It's like saying you believe you can fly, but if you're never willing to go jump off of a tall building, I'm probably going to question whether or not you actually believe that.
Do you think that Christians are more reasonable?
Yes.
And what would you owe that to?
Well, there was a great video by Inspiring Philosophy that did a whole full breakdown of this, actually, of how atheists have a tendency, when tested, to not actually be the more reasonable groups of society. And as I said earlier, I believe, and from what I've seen, is that atheists tend to latch on to beliefs that are emotionally or psychologically appealing more than they are grasping onto things that are necessarily true. And at some base level, every atheist has to, I would argue, lean upon either something reductive, circular, or axiomatic, none of which they can ultimately justify, yet act like they live in a world of absolute truths that they can't justify through the realm of naturalism and materialism. I've yet to hear any convincing good argument for naturalism or materialism to be given. Would you like to share finally what you actually believe?
So I heard you address atheism, but I didn't hear you address any other belief systems.
He did address other belief systems, and he's basically addressing all belief systems other than the Christian worldview, saying they're axiomatic, circular, or reducible to infinite regress. They're unjustified is what it is. I mean, you can go into Agrippa's trilemma or the Munchausen trilemma, but the problem is justification. When you go against Smokey's worldview as a Christian, he's saying you're just going to come at me with feelings, things you're feeling, things that seem to be the case based on a worldview of experience and observation. But the idea here is to go prior to that, right? What is your justification? What is your stance? So we'll see if you can extract that out of William here.
Okay. Can I get an answer to the question of what you actually believe, so I'm not wasting my time here meandering around in the weeds of multiple faith systems?
Right, exactly. That's what needs to be asked here. So that's good. Welcome, Eric. How you doing?
Doing well, brother. How about yourself?
Good. I'm gonna turn your volume down because for some reason this video is pretty low volume, so I turned my own volume down.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Let me just try to adjust this here. You got to unmute so I can try to adjust it.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's see. Yeah, that'll probably be better. Okay, so yeah, somebody brought this to my attention. I think it was the Christian Carpenter that they did this today. So he just asked him what is his actual worldview.
So I'm not wasting my time here meandering around in the weeds of multiple faith systems.
What specifically do you want to hear about?
I just want to know what you believe. Is that a complicated question?
Could be. Be more specific. What are you asking me?
Okay. Okay, sure, that's fine. What do you believe about God? Or let me rephrase. What do you believe specifically about the Christian God?
I believe he's mythology.
Okay. And what do you mean by mythology?
I believe he's a representation of other myths that preceded him, a conglomeration of Sumerian myths, and then later on, when you get in towards the Christian version, it leans more Platonic.
Okay. Okay, so you have come to the conclusion, you would say, of your belief that it is mythology. Now, is there any God that you do believe in? Or are you a global atheist?
No, I mean I believe in a god or gods, a source.
So you do believe in an ultimate foundation, so like deism? Is that fair?
Yeah, deism or at least a deity that holds cosmic.
Okay, so he's not even sure. So right away, like this is problematic. Deism, Smokey, I'm pretty sure in one way or another he's going to go into epistemology, right? How he has knowledge of a deistic God. This is a problem for William. He's like, I don't really know, but you're wrong. I don't really know, but the Bible's a myth. So it's all about epistemology, epistemic justification, what his epistemic criteria is. That's what this is all about. We'll see if Smokey goes there.
Structure in place. He may or they may or may not interact with us, but I would see no reason to believe that the gods have interacted with us personally.
Okay. And what would communicate to you that they had interacted with us?
Visits.
Visits. Yeah. So Smokey's going into the right line of questioning. Like, how do you know this? Right. Again, epistemology. Good play.
Experience.
Okay. And how would that be recorded and relayed to other people?
I mean, I'm talking about something that's tangible, like a personal visit.
Are gods tangible?
He wants a personal visit. I don't know. I'm sorry. It's funny because I've never heard him answer these types of questions that needed to be asked. That's perfect. So this is basically over, but Will doesn't know that. So to see what happens is going to be comical, but I'll try to be gracious about this. I'm sure. If I know William, I'll try to pull something here.
Tangible?
Depends
In
on
your
who you.
Are gods tangible?
Depends
in
on
your
who you
in your
ask.
worldview, are gods tangible?
Not that I've seen so far.
Well, no, but I mean, okay. Is it philosophically possible for your gods to be tangible?
Is it philosophically possible for the source being to be physical?
Yes.
In as much as the universe or the cosmos is physical,
So
then that God
your
is physical.
God is made out of the same thing as the universe.
No, the universe is made out of the same thing that the God is.
Yeah, so the title of this, Is It Reasonable to Believe? This is great because if you think about that title and you know nothing about these two, listen to what Smokey is asking this Will guy, right? Is it reasonable to believe? He's asking him fundamentally what he believes, and he's like, I don't know. There might be a creator. He might be tangible. He might not. I need a visit from him and so forth and so on. Like, is this reasonable as a starting point? Certainly not to go around questioning people and smashing down their beliefs with your start of I don't know, it is what it is type of foundation. He doesn't even have a starting point, and he's gone into this discussion. And I'm saying that just because it's not just this discussion. He's been going around for a year making fun of Christians. And this
I think
is
I think he's overestimating his argument too. He's wearing his Negan and Lucille baseball bat.
well, no, that's symbolic of using force and other tactics. This is not a true philosophical discussion. He can't provide an epistemology for his position, so he's going to need to use force and rhetoric and other avenues to even get an edge.
I mean, what kind of a belief system is it to say, yeah, I believe there's a God, but I don't know a thing about him? Nothing.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what Smokey's pulling out of him here. That's where you want to go to his knowledge of where he starts in his quote reasonable belief system. So
Yeah,
this is actually already over.
Yes. I hope he just asks him to tell him what he does know about his God.
Well, yeah, that's where he's driving, right?
Okay, so the matter in the universe is co-eternal with God, or the matter in the universe was made and created by God ex nihilo?
The matter in the universe would have probably come out of the God. There's no way to be certain how much is necessary for the God.
And that
There's no way to be certain what is necessary for the God. I mean, is he just making this? He's just making this up. I don't know how else he would have such knowledge. This is just this is like story time.
that is your reasonable belief.
No, it's not reasonable.
Okay, then why do you hold it?
Good.
It's just a faith stance. It doesn't.
Okay, so he's saying it's not reasonable. That's good. That's it. That might. I mean, that's his best move because the truth is all belief systems are gonna be faith reliant. So that's a good point.
It's not reasonable. I can't prove it. It would be silly for me to posit it as an actual thing. It's an unfalsifiable claim.
So, okay, so you admit you believe in something that you have no reason to believe.
Correct.
Okay, I don't know where else I need to go with it.
Yeah. I mean, 13 minutes in, it goes for an hour. That is basically true. I think, I'm guessing he's going to try to turn that around, right? Like you do the same thing. He's going to go for you do it too, sort of like a trap, like, I set you up. I said I believed in a God and that it's not reasonable. And you agree and you believe in God. The problem he doesn't realize is for him to critique Smokey, he's got to have an understanding of how to come to knowledge, of how to do this, of how to navigate this conversation. And he has unarmed himself. He doesn't have that. So that's obviously a huge fundamental problem. He's just abandoned epistemology and metaphysics. He doesn't know how things came to be, where matter comes from, how it's interrelated with this God that he's made up. So he has that problem. And then Smokey's mentioned morals and ethics earlier, which was going to be the other part of philosophy where he's going to need to tie that in on how his position is the right way and how Smokey ought to take him seriously and so forth and so on. He's pretty much completely done. So, Smokey's being quite gracious. The laughter, I think, is warranted there. Let's replay that part.
Believe. So, okay. So you admit you believe in something that you have no reason to believe.
Correct.
Okay. I don't know where else I need to go with it. We're talking about reasonable beliefs, and you just admitted that your beliefs are unreasonable. So I don't know where. Yeah, I'll tell
I didn't
you what.
say
I'll hand over.
I said the belief in that God, that anything beyond cosmic structure, that is unreasonable. Cosmic structure pretty much can sum up what I experience and make my judgments on.
Okay, what now you need to explain what cosmic structure is.
The system that we
Cosmic structure. So he made a pretend position, and now he's saying that cosmic structure is his position. I'm not quite sure I follow what he just did there.
live in that basically shapes our perceptions.
Okay, now does that come from a god?
It could.
Does it come from the god you don't believe it's reasonable to believe in?
Well, he never told me.
Yeah, this is just game playing. I really don't even want to go into this. I mean, I don't think it's worth critiquing, because if I keep pointing out how absurd this is, then, well, then I have to take issue with the guy with the baseball bat who's going to be boo-hooing for who knows how long for me pointing this out. I'm pretty sure Smokey already did this. So whatever, it's over. It's been over. He's playing a game here. Cosmic structure is the position. Whatever explanatory power cosmic structure thinks he has, it's the same problem. His epistemology, his understanding of how he's extracting knowledge out of that for meaning, value, and purpose, which he essentially can't do. So
I was just at Math Pig's channel, and they were having another debate. Will Freeman was there too.
I was actually doing something, but I did want to jump on this for a minute, but this is already over from my perspective. Smokey's already dismantled him, and he's changing his position into, he's adding to his position. I don't even care. It's just he's playing games. So Eric, you can take the stage. You can share this and continue it at the 13-minute mark, but I do have to get going, actually, and I'll be back, as usual. But if anyone wants to come in with Eric, you guys can do more of this, or do whatever. Or if you don't want to stay, Eric, what do you think?
I'll hang out. I'll go through it.
Just
I
go
saw
ahead and
Smokey
share.
in the audience too.
Yeah, Smokey can come in. Maybe he doesn't want to critique his own. I don't know, but he's probably done with it. It's already over, and he went through it. So it's up to you guys. If you want to keep going through it, you can share it and go through it that way. And then if you want to change up your screen or whatever, I'm just going to give you control of the platform at this point. All right.
Okay.
You want me to make more unreasonable, unfalsifiable?
Well, I just noticed I'm not going to have control of this, brother.
What's going on? You can't share your screen?
Well, I don't have the link.
Okay, let me get you the link here.
I see we're at 11:49 or 13:49.
13:49. Yeah, let's just do a share. If I go and give you this, you can go ahead and pull that up. If anyone wants to come in with Eric, try to get in now, because I'll be gone for a while.
Okay.
You got that?
I'm there. Yeah.
Okay.
Hold
Yeah,
on just
Peter.
a sec.
Peter, you'd be a great addition to this. I know you don't like to come in often, but you'd be the one to be able to do this if you're interested. I know you're in the side chat doing it, so this is a good opportunity for you.
Okay, I'm about to try to share this. Sorry, I'm so slow.
No, I kind of sprung it on you that I had to go, and I'm pretty much done with this anyway.
Okay, I got the share up.
Here you go. If you want to click on the full screen, it might be
Okay,
better.
so guys, too, let me apologize ahead of time. As I go through this, I've got pneumonia, but I'm doing okay, guys. I'm hanging in there. So let me.
Okay. Take care, Eric. I'm gonna opt out. And if anyone wants to get in, I'll be just here for a couple more minutes. Click the link, but I'll check in back with you later.
Thank you, brother. God bless you.
God bless.
You want me to make more unreasonable, unfalsifiable claims? I mean, why would I do that? I'm not a liar.
Okay. Well, I believe that one should have an external reference point from just the self and
I really enjoyed that. Let me take it back a little bit further. I actually just left Math Pigs again myself. I guess they were having another debate that occurred after this one, and Will Freeman was there too. But when we started talking about the science, and this was atheism versus Christianity, and I was bringing in the fact that they can't create cells, therefore life couldn't exist without God. Will didn't want to hang around, I reckon. I don't know, but I love this response that Smokey's giving here. It's appropriate. Laughter.
Anything beyond cosmic structure, that is unreasonable. Cosmic structure pretty much can sum up what I experience and make my judgments on.
okay, what now you need to explain what cosmic structure is.
The system that we live in that basically shapes our perceptions.
Okay, now does that come from a god?
It could.
Does it come from the god you don't believe it's reasonable to believe in?
Well, he never told me.
Okay.
You want me to make more unreasonable, unfalsifiable claims? I mean, why would I do that? I'm not a liar.
Okay. Well,
isn't this hilarious that he begins this with an unreasonable, unfalsifiable claim, and he says, "Why would I make more? Why did you make this one in the first place?" That would be.
I believe that one should have an external reference point from just the self and self verification, because again, you fall into the trap of infinite solipsism, where you can't escape and prove your own existence. You use the word proof. I don't think you can actually prove you even exist. Certainly to any skeptical. In fact, any evidence out there can be denied. People can choose to deny it. They can come up with theories and ideas. I'm sure you've heard of the 10th man idea in scientific inquiry, where there's one person on a team of all scientists and they're all given the same data, and one person is obligated to come to the opposite conclusion or the divergent conclusion of what all of the others seem to find the consensus to. And no matter how implausible, no matter how ridiculous, no matter how absurd it seems, that 10th man is still expected to stick to it and give every possible falsifiable defeater that they can possibly think of to try and go against the normal consensus. So you're familiar with that idea, right?
Right. So is this more of your round? Do you need more for that?
I'm good, actually. I mean, he's already admitted that he has
All right.
unreasonable beliefs. He doesn't have
Well,
reasonable justifications for the things he believes. So he's just a wandering, I don't know, flesh beast with no real purpose, intrinsic
okay.
value,
Well,
telos.
that I'll
Um,
conditionally accept all of that. But you said that you have external grounding. What external evidence do you have that you have a reasonable source of information that's superior to what I observe?
Well, I have a collection of arguments that I believe justify the existence of the Christian God.
Oh, really?
I don't know if, well, yeah, of course. I do adhere to and believe in certain components of the transcendental argument. I do think that Darth Dawkins perverts it, but I do believe that one must rely upon a central grounding reference point in order for knowledge or truths of the universe to be tangible or even knowable. There must be something grounding the consistency of these things. Otherwise, there's no faith that they will be consistent. Therefore, you have no faith that they will be consistent over time and that you can rely upon them. The laws of logic can change if you don't have something foundational to put them on. I also like the fine tuning of the universe argument. While many Christians will focus on the fine tuning of the solar system or the earth, which I think are good arguments in and of themselves, when tallied on top of all the other arguments, I do like the fine tuning of the universe, which is that all the metrics in the universe have to be fine tuned to a very, very specific degree. So much so that even the metric of the amount of matter that is in the universe is fine tuned to the metric of 1 times 10 to the 60th power. Which is just a little bit less than the number of atoms in the known universe. And what that means is that if we had even a dime shaped amount of more matter in the universe or less matter than the universe would either expand too fast and stars and galaxies and planets would never form, or it would be too much and everything would collapse into a giant black hole. So the fine tuning of the universe, I think, is also a good argument. I also like the argument from abiogenesis that it seems that such a complex organization of ingredients to create the first genome, the first cell, the first bit strand of DNA is beyond anything we can expect to actually occur in any naturalistic paradigm. I can keep going. I don't know if you want to
Well,
address.
before you go any further, and I'm sure you probably can, with those, what makes you think that that's exclusive to Yahweh?
Because it's the only god in the ancient Near East and only the god that seemed to emerge even after the fact in the AD that manages to make the correct claim about its essence, being outside all of time and creation, while all of the other gods have a genesis, an origin, a birth, or coming out of the the seed of someone jerking it into the Nile River or some damn thing. The God of the Bible is unique in that he is presented as supreme, timeless, endless before all of creation and eternal. And I think that makes the claim unique and coherent with the nature of reality.
You said presented. You said presented, so you're saying presented somewhere. This God is presented.
Yes, I believe he shows himself in the book of Revelation and the book
Hmm.
of nature.
The book of Revelation only?
I just said the revelation in the book of nature and in the divine revelation. Yes, absolutely. Between those
Okay.
two things.
So the divine revelation would be the Bible, and in nature you see specifics that point to Yahweh that you could make the case for Yahweh without having to use the Bible at all to justify.
Oh no, no. I think that well, let me think about that for a second before I answer, because I want to be clear on this. I don't want to split
Is-
too many
Let me
hairs.
let me change the question to something.
Sure.
Is there
Okay.
anything in nature that screams Yahweh without any reference to the Bible or the scrolls or whatever?
You guys,
For the sake of the argument right now, I will just say no.
All right, so then we go to a singular reference point at the moment until another one comes up, which is the Bible.
Correct. I don't think. See. Here's the thing. To me, the book of nature tells us there's a God, but unless that God does something to introduce himself to us, they're just an anonymous entity.
We
I
agree.
think-
do you guys see the game that William is playing here? He's asking him, can you describe these things that are proof of God without using the Bible as a reference? Well, anything that you're going to point out, anything in nature that you're going to point out proves that it points to God. You're going to have to point out the biblical reference that it's pointing to. And William surely knows this. Now, how fair is it to ask, does anything in nature prove to you that God is true, that this is the Christian God? And can you show this without showing any scripture? That is just a ridiculous question. It's a ridiculous standard. I would prefer he ask something like, what in the scripture can you point to that parallels something in nature that proves a Christian God? That's the question he should ask if he's going to be fair and honest about this. But we all know William, don't we?
Agree.
Okay.
We agree entirely up to the
Okay.
point where you bring your source point of the Bible. I don't agree that the Bible is indicative of Yahweh being. I don't think it's conclusive that Yahweh inspired that.
Okay. And why is that?
There's no way to prove it.
It's his feelings.
It's not even
Okay.
consistent in its own descriptions of God and his nature.
In what way? I'm going to let you lean here because I don't want to address arguments you don't have, and I don't want to assume
That's fair.
you have arguments you don't have. So I do want to let you lead here a little bit and give your
Okay.
actual objection. Here's the thing. There's
I'm not
two
being
atheists.
contentious.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I might refer to you as an atheist, but I'm not referring to you as a global atheist. Okay. You're an atheist to the Christian God alone, just
That's
for the
fair.
sake of this argument. Is that okay?
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree. That's fair.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So you're an atheist to the Christian God specifically, and that's the frame of our conversation. Okay. Now, I don't want to assume defeaters because here's the thing: there's two kinds of atheists to the Christian God. There's those that are more agnostic, soft atheists who just say, I haven't had enough information to believe, or they're the type that say, no, I have tested the claim of the Bible, the biblical God, and I believe he's incoherent or inconsistent or contradictory, and therefore I don't believe him. Which one of those two are you?
The latter.
Okay, fair. Okay, so that means you have your own version of justifications that you believe make the Christian God incoherent or unreliable or invalid of his claim. So let's start there then. Go ahead and lay out some challenges.
Well, let me preface this by saying that Yahweh might actually be the God, but I don't believe that the Bible was inspired by him or written in any way with any real knowledge of who the God was.
Okay. Have you researched any of the claims of prophecy in scripture? I don't really want to get mugged down in
Sure.
this, but have you researched any of the claims of prophecy?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And I
But
guess, go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Let
No,
me
no, no,
let,
no,
let
no,
me
you're fine. Go ahead. Clarify.
yeah.
Go ahead.
When you talk about prophecy too, are we specifically talking about the Old Testament or are we talking about Old and New?
You know what? I'll tell you what. I'll let you pick.
I mean, I'll take the whole
Oh,
Bible.
that you
I'll
can't
take the
pick.
whole
That's not
Bible.
representative of your faith then.
Let me just take the whole.
Well, no,
let me
I
just-
want to answer the challenges that he wants to propose, and I want him to come from. Here's the thing: I do not want to put arguments in his mouth that he doesn't have, or doesn't believe, or have a problem with. So he has to pick. If he wants to focus on the Old Testament, focus on the Old Testament. If he wants to take the whole thing, take the whole thing. You do want to focus
Which
on the
do
New
you
Testament. It
believe?
doesn't matter.
Which is
What do you
more
mean?
important to you? Answer me that, and then Will can go down that route. Which is more important to your beliefs, the older than you?
All of it together. It's all a collective. It is. It's all
That's
a
fine.
collective.
That's fine.
It's all a
It's not fair
collective
to make him
line.
choose, man. It's not fair to make him choose because
Well,
they
no, it's like
interweave the
saying,
Old
well,
Testament.
which part of God's revelation is more important to you? It's a ridiculous question. I mean,
Well,
of
I'm
course,
making an
all of
assumption that
God's. Go
I'm
ahead.
making an assumption that in the New Testament there are Old Testament prophecies that are relied upon. Therefore, it's we have to look at them as a continuation.
Well, let me give this argument to you. Let me see how you feel.
Once you get them out of their comfort zone, they get very nervous and they don't want to explain their own view, as we've seen 1,000 times, 1,001, 1,000,001 times. We've seen this just over and over and over again. So what they try to do then is narrow us. Like they're trying to get him to pick, do you want to just stick to the New Testament or the Old Testament? It's all God's book. And it's all written for us. So no, there is no dividing the word of God. This is just another attempt here to comfort them.
About this one. So, based upon scholarship and, of course, Christian tradition, and itemized work of the church and priests and scribes and bishops and all that, we've come to find what we believe are about 300 or so Old Testament prophecies about Christ coming to earth. And the New Testament, the four Gospels, and certainly various parts of the epistles lay reference to these prophecies. But in specifically the four Gospels, we found around 300. or so prophecies from the Old Testament that link to what was recorded in the New Testament. Now, fair. Let's just say for a moment I agree with what your objective would be, which is it's all fabricated, right? Is that maybe what you would think? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
It's mythologized. I don't think it's all fabricated. It's
Okay.
mythologized.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so it's mythologized. So maybe there's some truth in it mixed with a bunch of I don't know what I don't know embellishment. Basically, is that where would that be fair?
Yeah, heavily embellished.
Okay, heavily embellished to the point where you would say miracles certainly didn't happen.
A miracle. You mean like walking on water?
Right.
Yeah, I don't believe Jesus walked
Okay.
on water.
Can we put a pin on that? We'll come back to it. Okay, I want to
Sure.
focus
If
back to my original point. So I'll come back to it. But let's go back to the original point. So we have 300 of these prophecies in there. Now, the Old Testament back in those days was not recorded the way it is now, where we have chapters and verses and easy delineations to find things. It was all in these long, drawn out scrolls. Like when you got a book, you got the whole scroll, and you had to know it very, very well to know where anything was or any reference point was to it. And you had to know it very, very thoroughly and have some very in deep knowledge to it. Now, what we find with the four Gospels is the manifestation of the reference point of these 300 prophecies. Now, I think even if you were to take a naturalistic paradigm approach and look at this, someone being able to create four different books, each with the same coherence and consistency, all referencing Old Testament prophecies, some in unison, some individually, all referencing back and keeping all of that together and finding all of those different references through all of these hundreds of pages, all of these scrolls, and being able to find all of these references and pull them forward from memory into these books to reference them all individually, I think is an action of mere supernatural capacity. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that would be contingent about however many of these prophecies about the Messiah really came true and applied. So, what's your favorite messianic prophecy that you think Jesus fulfilled?
Oh, well, naturally, as a Christian, I mean, the favorite would have to be his death, burial, and resurrection. And I
Mm,
would go to
What
passages.
prophecy is that fulfilling?
Well, like for instance, in Psalms, I think it's Psalms 22, as memory serves, where David writes this very vivid image of him being basically, essentially, what seems to be a future image of Christ's crucifixion. And he's going through the lines of what it was like to be in this state of affairs, is almost as if he was seeing it prophetically into the future. And the record that we have, of course, later on of Christ's crucifixion fits this very well, including Christ's very last words, which actually fit very well directly into the reference of this psalm. So even Christ himself on the cross references this psalm, saying this is talking about me by using the last words, his last dying breath,
Wait,
to draw
excuse me though.
reference to it.
Are you calling David a prophet?
Yes.
David had his own prophet, Nathaniel, and before that Samuel. Why if he was a prophet does he have his own prophets?
Well, David is well, this is now theology. This is going to be a Bible lesson. But David is a typology of a priest king, which of course is what Jesus is. He is of a different priestly order, of which David is a typology or a Christology, Christophany, if you will. Which is an old shadowing or something that's shown in the Old Testament that draws reference point to the future Messiah. And this is the priest king of Israel. So yes, David had the position and the stance of prophetic deliberation. So
And so the verse that you're talking about, refresh my memory. What was it that you say sounds like Jesus is?
here, okay, well, I'll pull it up. Just give me a second.
You can't share it because Math Pig
That's fine.
will
No, I
lose
don't.
his
Well,
mind.
I'll read
We
it.
trust him on the read. He trusted us on the pink, non-pink.
Yeah, I trust you on the read. It's your book.
Okay. 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 Give me 1 second.
Yeah, apologies for not being able to share the screen to everybody watching, but doing some jiggery to make it nice and all of this, and it just limits me at the minute.
And to anyone who's, I don't know because I don't have it up, but if anyone's trying to say anything to me in the chat, and I'm not being rude, I just don't have the YouTube up.
I'm watching the chat. If there's anything directly aimed at each other, there is lots being directly aimed, mainly with a lot of the audience that leans the atheistic, disagreeing with Smokey. But then, that's why you're here, Will. But if there's anything that anybody wants to specifically ask of the people on the panel, please do keep a wee memory of it. Towards the end, we'll maybe throw some out and we'll do a lightning round of 10 questions for Willie and 10 questions for Smokey and see how that goes. And all going well, we'll maybe open it up afterwards if the panelists want to hang around. But yeah, it seems to be going good. You're giving each other decent time. I don't think anyone's really broke over 2 minutes or so. Like, you're doing good. Very proud of you
Oh,
boys.
appreciate it. It was not Psalm 22. I got it wrong. I'm sorry, biblically illiterate today. I think it's Psalm 21. Give me a second. I know it is one of these 20s right here.
It's not 23, is it?
I don't think so. It might be. Hold on. Been a while since I looked this one up. No, that's the Good Shepherd one is a different one.
Come on now. See, this is a good thing. Pointing out to a person in the chat who's asking about the background music. When there's dead silence and nobody's talking, that's why you're hearing the background music. If people were having a debate, then you wouldn't hear the background music.
that's a fair point.
If everybody was actually talking, the moment it went quiet, somebody was like, "The background noise. It's distracting." You didn't hear it before. Everybody was
No,
talking.
I think I did get it right the first time. I think it is actually 22. I don't know why. I think I may have typed it in wrong, possibly. KJV. Okay. All right. I'll read it. Excuse me. Okay. To the chief musician upon Ijeleth Shahar, Psalm of David. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me and from the words of my roaring? O my God, I cry in the daytime, but thou hearest not, and in the night season, and I'm not silent, but thou art holy. O thou that inhabitest the praises of Israel, our fathers trusted in thee. They trusted and thou didst deliver them. I'm going to switch from KJV because that's going to get tedious. Oh, gosh, freaking Brian Reader. Okay, here we go. All right. I think it was, Brandon Irish got this locked in here. Okay, they cried unto thee and were delivered. They trusted in thee and were, oh, wait, hold on. Sorry. I just switched it. There we go.
This is
there
coming
we
up
go.
in
Now
5 minutes now. Come on.
Okay, all right. Our fathers trust in you. They trusted and you delivered them. They cried to you. They were delivered. They trusted in you. Were not ashamed. But I am a worm and no man, a reproach of men and despised by the people. All those who see me ridicule me. They shoot out the lip. They shake the head, saying, "He trusted in the Lord. Let him rescue him," which, of course, is something they say, mocking him on the cross. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. But you are he who took me out of the womb. You made me trust while on my mother's breasts. I was cast upon you from birth. From my mother's womb, you have been my God. Be not far from me, for trouble is near, for there is none to help. Many bulls have surrounded me. Strong bulls of Bashan have encircled me. There's theological significance there, but I won't go into it. They gape at me with their mouths like a raging and roaring lion. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It has melted within me. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue clings to my jaws. You have brought me to the dust of death. For dogs have surrounded me. The congregation of the wicked has enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. I can count all my bones. They look and stare at me. They divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. But you, O Lord, do not be far from me. O my strength, hasten to help me. Deliver me from the sword, my precious life from the power of the dog. Save me from the lion's
That's
mouth.
2
and from the
minutes.
horns of... Okay, all right.
Okay.
And the 6 to set it up, for fuck's sake.
Well, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm winding. Go on ahead.
It was 22. I was right the first time. I should have skimmed further through the passage. My bad.
All right. So, I mean, there is some symbolism there that I can see, but with the pierce the hands and feet, I believe is referring to his hands being tied in this situation that he was in, because if I'm not mistaken, at the time there was the Saul line, and then there was the Davidic faction, and there was a Samuel had first declared Saul king and anointed, and now David had to wait his turn. But there was already rumors around, and Saul was tortured day and night by his fears. So David was like running for a great period of time, and I believe that's when he penned this. Maybe it's not talking about his situation, but it seems like it has to be bent a little bit to make it fit. Do you have anything else that is more conclusively pointing at Jesus as being the Messiah?
See, I think probably what we should do at this point, because what's going to happen
Could
is
I
I'm going
ask you a question then, a different one then? We'll
to.
just
Okay,
get off
that's
of.
fine.
All right. How about this? Could Jesus be the Messiah if he was a liar?
No.
Okay. So there's this, I think it's in Luke. Um, is it in Luke
Are
where
you
he
talking about
decides
where
that,
he didn't tell the disciples that he was going down, and then he ended up going down?
no. It's when he read in the synagogue. He read Isaiah 61, the first part of it.
Okay.
Are you
I don't.
familiar with that verse?
Not specifically off the top of my head.
So I believe it's in Luke. He gets up on Sabbath and takes the scroll of Isaiah and begins in Isaiah 61. And he reads almost all of the verse and then says, "In your hearing this day, this is fulfilled," and sits down. He
Okay.
doesn't quite finish the verse, but he's saying that Isaiah 61 is about him. Would you agree that that was what he's saying?
Well, I need to go back and look at it. I'm not sure exactly what you're referencing exactly. I need to go back and read it, but I'll go with it for right now. Sure, I guess yeah. If he's reading Isaiah, and
Could
remember
you
there were no verses or chapters back then, you know. So, but whatever. Yeah, go ahead. I mean, whatever you want to say about that. I don't have it in front of me. I'm not sure what the reference point exactly is. So I mean, if you know it, I mean, I could pull it up. We can look at it. I could read it, or
Oh, I
I
was
mean, I'm
muted.
just
I was muted. My bad. I'm pulling it up right now. Isaiah 61.
okay.
All right. So here we go. Isaiah 61. He said, "The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted and to proclaim liberty to the captives and the opening of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all that mourn." Of course, he just stopped at to proclaim the acceptable year of our Lord and stopped.
Hmm.
But there's
Yeah.
more.
Oh, that
There's
makes
more.
beautiful sense. That makes beautiful sense. Actually, I wonder why. I know why he would, because the Jews were expecting a Messiah to come down who was going to liberate them from Roman rule and make them a world superpower and bring them back to where they had basically been in exile from kingdom to kingdom. And this was not Christ's purpose for this time on this earth. He was here as a servant. In fact, the theme of each one of the Gospels encompasses each one of the, I guess you would say, purposes, for lack of a better word, for his presence here, or his nature, or his essence. He was here as the servant. Mark records him as the servant. Luke records him as a man, fully man. Matthew records him as a king, and John records him as God. Now, here you see where he stopped. It's because at this time, he's here to be a servant. He's not here to bring the vengeance, the judgment, and the destruction. That's what happens in Revelation at the end. That's where the completion of the rest of that passage comes into play. So, of course, naturally, when he is here teaching and giving them a mirror or basically a shadow of the past that is pointing to him at this time, he's not going to bring up the vengeance side, because that's not what comes later. His purpose in his ministry at this time is to be the suffering servant. And by
But
the way,
he is
this is how
he
prophecies usually function. They
okay.
divide. I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The suffering servant, that's we can get into that, but and that's fine. But before we go there, wasn't the Messiah supposed to be born in Bethlehem?
I'm not sure. Well, he was. I mean, as far as the record
Well,
goes, he was.
I'm going to that prophecy for a reason.
Okay.
All right, so I guess that would be Micah 5:2, as Jill told me earlier, and it says, and this would be a prophecy that I believe you would think is fulfilled, since you said that he was, so Jesus was. It says, "But you, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are a small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from old, from ancient times. This prophecy was recognized and quoted in the New Testament, right? So this is one of the messianic prophecies. Do you believe this was fulfilled?
What? Read it one more time.
Okay, sure. It says the Old Testament prophecy that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem is primarily found in Micah 5:2. This verse states that, "But you, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from ancient times."
Okay.
You believe that was fulfilled?
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Okay, so when was that fulfilled?
What do you mean? It would have been when Christ was born.
Right, but it says a ruler would come out of.
Yeah, well, that's of course true, because again, the scriptures were divided between a prophecy of Christ's work here as the servant and Christ's work here as the ruler, the judge, the one who is coming down to make everything right, to replenish Israel, to bring everyone back under his wings, as he says in Isaiah. There is a time for him to be here as the suffering servant, to die for everyone's sins and sacrifice himself for the redemption of mankind. And then there's another time, another age, which is a different set of prophecies that confirm that he's going to come back and judge. And by the way, many Old Testament prophecies are like this, especially in Ezekiel, where he is prophesying about Nebuchadnezzar conquering Tyre. And he speaks about a present time, a present period of time where Nebuchadnezzar is attacking, and then he talks about a later time down the road. When you see the present time coming into fulfillment and you know what happened, you can take confidence that the latter part of the prophecy is going to come true. And many Hebrew prophecies are split this way, to where you have something there's something that's either a word of knowledge that couldn't be known or something that is immediately proven true.
So are we saying that only part of this prophecy is true?
Currently, only part of it is fulfilled. The rest of the prophecy is still waiting to be fulfilled for Christ's return. Hence, that's why Christ stopped at that point you talked about in Isaiah 61. This feels a lot like a Bible study with a non-believer, by the way. I usually don't.
Well, it doesn't matter how it feels. This is just my question. So what I'm saying, and
this is better.
I'm not ignorant.
But this isn't debate stuff. Yeah, well, clearly you are, buddy, because you don't really know any of this stuff.
There's no reason to get into
it. Well, see, here's the thing. These are not complex.
I'm not done. I'm not done.
Okay. These are both talking over each other. So give it a wee minute and let Willie just say his wee piece. Smokey, you have been, just objectively talking more in this than he has. He's usually 40 seconds. You're in around 2 minutes. Just let Willie do his thing and then respond.
Have him take as long as he wants.
Okay. I was just saying that while Jesus was on earth, he was never a ruler. He never ruled anything. So that is yet to be fulfilled. So I can't attribute this as being a fulfilled prophecy towards Jesus. He may have been born in Bethlehem, but so are many people. I'm done.
How long can I have?
Oh, no. Talk normally. talk away, man. I'm just pointing at one fact out.
No, I don't want to be accused of being unfair here.
Nobody is accusing you of being unfair. Nobody is accusing you of being unfair. Willie is asking questions. You're giving answers. Generally, answers take longer to say than questions. Right. Don't get fucking butthurt.
I'm not getting butthurt. I'm just saying I just don't want it to be.
Talk like you normally do, and if you're rambling, I'll shut you down. Go on.
All right, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. So, refresh me the question one more time, Will Freeman, please.
I said, if that's one of the messianic prophecies that you rely on, I can accept that perhaps he fulfilled being born in Bethlehem, but the latter part of that is yet to be fulfilled. So Jesus is not exclusively the only one that could fulfill that.
Okay. The point that he fulfilled the first part is the indicator and the sign that he'll fulfill the second part. If he did fulfill the first part, we can count on the fact that he will fulfill the second part, which is why many times prophecies are split. This is what gives, here's the thing. In the old, can I do this? This is going to take a minute. Okay. All right. So in the Old Testament, God even says that he would allow false prophets to come in to tempt the people. He would allow them to come in and tempt them to see if they were really true, if their faith had remained solid, because faith that's never tested is weak and brittle and frail. And the first difficult time you have, it completely falls apart. So the idea that there would be false prophets emerge, the only way you could test a false prophet is to see if one of their prophecies was true or false. And so what many prophets would do to basically verify, almost a seal of who they come from, who they're speaking to. They would give an immediate prophecy that could be fulfilled very soon in the near future. And then, if that happened, then they would have confidence and faith that the future prophecies, the more if you're further on down the road, those could be believed because the initial prophecy was found true. This is why in the Old Testament it talks about if you get a prophet who even gets it wrong once, you're supposed to stone that prophet and move on.
I think they did that with Jesus.
Well, Jesus was claiming to
No,
be
no,
God.
no. Wait, understand what I'm saying. I think that if that prophecy is true about a false prophet, and
No,
this
that's not a
prophecy didn't come true,
prophecy. It's not a
hold on.
prophecy. It's a command.
Okay, it's
That's
the
all I
law.
said. It's
Okay,
a
it's a
law.
law. Fine, you've corrected me. So it's a law about a false prophet. It sounds like the Jews were well in line to crucify Jesus for being a false prophet.
He wasn't a false prophet, and he hadn't given any false
All
prophecies.
right, what's your next fulfilled messianic
No,
prophecy?
hold on, hold on. He didn't. Let's not run away from that.
Oh, we
He
don't
didn't.
need to run. We can stay right here.
Oh, okay. He didn't have any false prophecies. Number one, at all. So I don't know what you're referencing to. And second of all, it was very
Okay.
clear if you read the Gospels why he was crucified. Do you know why he was crucified? The claim
I
that was
I
made.
can accept your challenge that you said that there's no prophecies that he gave that he didn't fulfill. But what about when he said, "Some of you that are standing right here will see my return"?
That's not really the right words. I mean, you're kind of paraphrasing that with an interpretation.
Oh,
Until
did he
all of
not mean that?
until of all of these things they was talking about come to pass. I think you're talking about the prophecy in Luke about the end of the world and also the sacking of Jerusalem. And actually, all Christian scholarship understands that there are pieces of these words that Christ was giving, prophecies of the future, that actually did become fulfilled and were intended to be fulfilled in 70 AD, which is what he was talking about. Was says that some of you here will not, die until these things have been fulfilled, because he's referencing basically what's going to be the sacking of Jerusalem and the destruction of.
I'm going to stop it right there for just a moment and make a comment too. The let me see. I know it's right here somewhere. Okay, here it is. Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay. Bear with me just a moment. It's Matthew 16, verse 28. And verily, verily, I say unto you, there be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Now, that can be taken in a lot of different ways. And yet, I can tell you one way that this is actually fulfilled. And you can see it. This goes right along with another thing that Jesus said about John as he's coming in, talking with Peter, saying, okay, this is how you're going to die. And Peter kind of freaked out. And he sees John walking behind him and he says, well, what about this guy? And Jesus said, basically, if I will that this man tarry until I return, that's his business. And that's my business. But you follow me. In other words, don't worry about what this man's going to do. Now, if you take both of those statements by Christ, there be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. And then you take his statement about John. What if John tarries until he sees my return? Well, this was actually fulfilled in the book of Revelation, where John witnessed through visions the return of Jesus Christ. Think about it. We see him returning in, Revelation chapter 6, I believe it is. Revelation chapter 11 at the sixth seal, at the seventh trump. And then at the end with the vials. Then we see it again in Revelation chapter 16, Revelation chapter 20. We see it in, so all of these things were taken out of the book of Revelation. These were all times and instances where John was given a definite vision of the Lord Jesus Christ returning. So he literally saw the return of Christ on several occasions, right there on the Isle of Patmos. So no matter how else anybody else wants to interpret that vision, this is true. John witnessed the return of Jesus Christ through visions.
Of the temple in 70 AD, and then the rest of what he's talking about has to do with the actual end of the age, the end of the world, because he was asked two questions. He was asked, what is the sign of your coming, and what is the sign of the end of the age? So they're basically referencing 2 points, or I think that's the words. I have to go back and see it.
Did
But
the
they're asking
disciples
two
understand that?
Well, not necessarily. They may have. I don't know. Possibly. Probably. I don't know. They had the Holy Spirit. They very well may have. Scholars certainly understood it. So what you have is again this prophecy where it's split down the middle, where Christ gives some information to be fulfilled in the near future, and then you can count on the rest of prophecy to be fulfilled in the later future. And one of which had to do with the sacking of the temple, which is why when he's referencing and talking to these people, some of you, won't see death until these things have come to pass, referencing, of course, the sacking of the temple in 70 AD, which would be about 40 years, after he died.
But not his return. He wasn't talking about his return.
Correct. Yes, clearly.
All right.
Unless you actually want to take one of the extreme, preterist views, and
No.
you want to claim that Jesus did return in AD 70, and we have to try and find a way to make that work.
Oh, I definitely don't think he returned.
Okay, well then we're good. I don't either.
I don't even think he resurrected. I don't think there's a prophecy about him resurrecting, is there?
Actually, that's an interesting point that you make there.
In the ceremony, that the sacrificed lamb never had to come back to life. Once the lamb died, the sins were paid for and it was done. There was no resurrection involved in the ritual.
That's a good point. But now this is going to be more theology. I don't know how deep we want to get into this, Math Pig. This really has nothing to do with reasonable beliefs. I mean, we're just having Bible study at this point. I mean,
you two are bouncing back and forth. Nobody is keeping it. As I say, most of the time it's not been breaking 2 minutes. You have been. People in the chat have even commented, Smokey, just to give you a compliment. People are saying you're being very respectful tonight, compared to usual. Compared to usual. I'm just saying, all right, you're getting compliments in the chat. You must have some fanboys. I'm being shouted out for being unfair and biased, but I'm trying my best. But it's up to you.
Wait a minute. No.
It has been going. Going for 45 minutes. It's been going for 45 minutes now. So if you want, we could spice it up a wee bit and ask some questions from the chat for another 15 minutes. That hits an hour, and then we could open it up.
Do you want to do that, Smokey?
Yeah, I'm good with that. And by the way, I do just want to say I think you've done a great job tonight, Math Pig, and I do think you've been very fair. I don't think you've done anything unscrupulous. So tip your hat. Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So kudos to Math Pig for moderating and being willing to do this. I know you had to take time out of your schedule. I don't know what god awful time it is there now.
Oh no, it's early here. Everybody was under the understanding that it was like 1 a.m. It's not. It's not even 11 o'clock here.
So I guess the comment I just made went unheard. I'm sorry about that, guys. I was on mute. What I was saying is, when Will said that he didn't think that it was prophesied that Jesus would rise from the dead, that's just ridiculous. Psalms chapter 19 or 16 rather is a perfect example of one of the places where it's prophesied that Jesus is going to resurrect. Psalms 16:10 says, "For thou wilt not leave my soul in hell, neither wilt thou suffer thine Holy One," which was Jesus, of course, to see corruption. Thou wilt not leave my soul in hell, neither wilt thou suffer thine Holy One to see corruption. That's the corruption of the dead body. Of course, his body did not corrupt in the grave. He died, he rose 3 days later before it could corrupt. So, sorry, Will. Wrong again, dude.
Thank you, Math Pig,
Yeah.
for doing this. But Smokey, before we put a pin
Sure.
in this,
Yeah, go ahead.
can I get you to admit that I'm not unreasonable?
No, I don't think you're a reasonable.
To be
man.
fair, you
I
did that
think I-
yourself about 25 minutes into the fucking debate. you
Yeah,
see.
right.
Is there anything that you think that I believe in that's unreasonable?
Yeah, your unreasonable God is one of them. I think it's very unreasonable to think that Ace Theo's version of Christianity, universalism, free grace, is the most coherent version of Christianity. And it looks like you don't really know much about theology, or certainly
So
church
mainly
history.
just things having
Oh.
to do with the booga booga.
Well, I guess that's what you've so far expressed. If you expressed other things about other things I find to be unreasonable, I'll call those out later too. But right
All
now,
right, cool.
with our limited interactions, you just shown to be very unreasonable in terms of what you take to be true or mostly coherent or most coherent in your mind. And that leads me to believe that yes, you're not a reasonable person, Will Freeman. Now, I don't take that to extend entirely necessarily to all atheists. I've found some atheists that are reasonable people. I've even converted some of them.
I'm not an
But
atheist.
Well, you're an atheist to the Christian God. Good enough. I know you're not a global atheist, but that's fine. You believe in a God that you have no reason to believe in. So that's
Likewise,
why.
you do too.
No, I don't. No, I have lots of reasons. I gave you a bunch, which you addressed none of them. And by the
Okay.
way, I have a lot more, but you addressed none of them, and you given no counterpoints or
So
reasons
let's
as to why
let's
that wouldn't be the
let's
case.
take the
So-
questions and then we'll come back to these.
I mean, in
things. How about
fact,
that?
you said you didn't have a good reason to believe in your God. I
That's
said
true.
I
I
did,
don't.
and then
I don't.
okay. Well, then I said I did, and I gave a bunch of arguments, and I have more, but I gave you a few, and you addressed none of them in terms of their coherency or difficulty, and I answered all your questions.
Well, you just
So-
mentioned the teleological fine tuning, all that. That's fine. We can talk about those individually if you want to. But the point was,
Well, you could have addressed any of them, but you
I
want to
could
go back.
have. You gave three
But you
stats.
want to go back on the attack stream instead of actually dealing with any of the actual arguments for the justification of what I would argue the Christian God. Because again, the Christian God is the only one with the claim that actually fits
get
the
it.
nature. Okay, of a transcendental entity. Okay, go ahead.
I was just saying I understand the source of your confidence comes from your book, and so that gives you the feeling it's an external
I do believe it's
source
a
of
miracle.
information.
I do believe it's a miracle for 66 books to come together by 40 different authors with consistency, coherency, and all referencing back to each other in a clear, concise type of way and keeping to the general theme, which is the prediction, the delivery, and the recording of the Messiah, his death and resurrection. I think there's plenty. More than sufficient evidence to believe that he lived, let alone died and was also resurrected. Not even his enemies of the day that came after were even dare to make such a bold claim that he didn't actually raise from the dead. So I believe there's a lot of good justifications. Habermas, what's his name? Gary Habermas, I think has an incredible tome that he's assembled together on a lot of the good justifications, both internal to the Bible and external to the Bible. And I think a lot of that is basically just an orgy of evidence, not only to the existence of Christ, but also his work, his ministry, and also how he died and how he resurrected.
If it's sufficient for you, I suppose.
Well, we all are accountable to our own level of sufficiency, and I would hope that if we're reasonable people, that we would look for reasonable justifications and external reference points for only just our individual subjective epistemology, which seems to be what you do. In fact, I think you tend to believe things that you like, not things that you tend to have any good reason for. And I think that's unreasonable. I think you're unreasonable. I think you're an unreasonable version of a non-global Christian atheist.
I think the only thing you've been able to say I'm unreasonable about is booga booga.
Okay, fine, buddy. That's good. I'm good.
Got
with that.
one
If
question
that's-
here. I can
Yeah.
see. Ask Will why he never had no valid facts, only opinionated assertions. That's for Will. I'm looking down. I'm not seeing any more. Do you want to go with that, Will?
Yeah, sure. Valid facts about what though? We're talking about booga booga.
Okay, you do understand that is a presupposition, right?
Explain it to me.
Well, as in you've simply adopted the idea that the Christian God or the manifestation of the Bible is a fraud or not recording actual history.
Oh, you want
And
to know? You want
so
to
I'm
know
wondering
reasons to
what
that?
standard, well, want to know what standard of evidence, since you're an unreasonable man,
Sure, sure.
what standard of unreasonable standards you're applying to come to
The
that
Bible,
conclusion
the
and why it
Bible
should
is
be trusted.
the Bible itself is inconsistent in the way that it describes the God and then attributes actions to him, which would be inconceivable of a God that's being given lip service to.
Like slavery?
No, I don't give a fuck about that.
Okay. All right. Well, then give me another example.
We got another question.
You're
We got a
muted.
question for Smokey this time, coming from Richard.
Sure.
What would be the difference between 66 books being coherent but written independently and your personal bias making them seem coherent look like?
Sure. Absolutely. Good question. I appreciate that. Well, whenever you have any type of field of research or study or dissertation or ideology that people are commenting on, and you get 40 people in a room, say 40 scientists in a room, you're going to get maybe even 40 different opinions. And certainly when you bring two Jews to an argument, you're going to get three opinions out of them. So people have the ability to engage in lots of epistemological traps, and this is why we kind of rely upon each other to provide arguments and then defeat those arguments if needed, so that we all help each other gleaning towards the truth, which means we rely upon an external reference point instead of just our own. So now, in terms of the Bible itself, with the 66 books, I think the fact that you can get 66 books written by 40 authors to all have the same theme and coherency, all pointing to the same thing in the future, none of them which knew was actually going to happen except through the revelation of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and all of them coming together to point in consistent thematic methodology to the coming of the Messiah, and all being on the same page, I think is nearly a supernatural work. I don't think human beings tend to be as collected and coherent and consistent all on their own to manifest something like that, which screams to me that there's probably a supernatural component to it.
Okay, William, would you like to retort to that? I ask the next question, which is also for Smokey. Can we have some questions for Will? Although we are getting to the hour time. Give us
You know how it works here, Math Pig. Most the Christians get most of the questions. You know how it works.
I'm being fucking in the middle, you know? Anyway, right.
don't even remember
Question
what
for
the question
Smokey.
was.
Why would we believe that the stories in the Bible are true if the evidence is so clear from the authors of the Bible were copying their stories from earlier nearby culture? From Ligma
Yeah.
to Smokey.
Appreciate it. That is an assertion, and certainly I'll give it to you. It's an academic assertion, but it's not the only academic assertion. And there is a great book I have from, I believe it's David Currid, called Against the Gods, which actually discusses in very pristine detail a lot of the cuneiform parallels, the Ugaritic texts, the Babylonian culture, all these things that secular scholarship will use to try and poke holes in the Bible. And what we find with greater scrutiny is that a lot of these narratives and these stealing of symbologies of other cultures in the Near East were actually intended to be polemics, to take the common symbology and the common cultural archetypes that were available at the time, like the chaos waters or the chaos serpent, Leviathan, which is used in the book of Genesis to talk about how God is actually supreme to Leviathan. The chaos waters is actually preeminent, and it uses that similar type of symbology, where the rest of the deity claim to be emerging out of the chaos waters or being born somehow. God, the Yahweh, has a very, very unique claim to where he is actually preeminent to all of creation, which makes him more viable in terms to believe. I'm sorry, did I answer the question or was I off there? Did I still not answer it? Give it to me one more time. Give it to me one more time, just to make sure I got it. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
Yes, I've been pointed out to me to a very nice person in the chat that my audio was not muting at me, as I had hoped. I was muted. I was checking to see if it was buffering. If the buffering's gone, that should be okay. Look like
Did I sufficiently answer the question, or
the gods of the internet made it buffer, so I don't know what went out there.
okay?
But the
All right.
question
Well, anyway,
is
I
aimed at
think.
Will. Does Will
I
think
think-
that you answered
go
the
ahead.
question?
Yep. Go ahead. Will, do you think I answered the question?
It sounded like you were.
Okay. All right. Okay, I guess we're good. So yeah, I would ultimately believe that there are polemics back there that many times are used to poke holes in it. That I don't think that's not a deductive argument. That's an abductive argument. That's up to debate. So anyway.
Okay, right. And we've hit the hour. If anyone wants to do some shilling, shout some out. Pointing out someone in the chat. If anyone wants to put Praise I Am's link, Praise I Am is there. Some people may not be subbed to Praise. You should,
Praise
and then
I
not watch it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything. That's
No,
fine.
you know, because he needs them numbers. He needs them numbers.
Was that all the
Just-
questions?
there was one other question I think that was aimed at both people, but the chat is scrolling quite quickly. We'd over 40 people here tonight, which is quite
Oh,
good.
nice. Well done. Okay, cool.
There was one from Halsey, I think, about there we are. Have either of you ever had an experience you couldn't explain?
Well, if you want to feel that.
Yes.
Will, you go first. Come on, Will.
He just
I
said
did.
no.
I
He
said
just said yes, and he's done with it.
Well, it's embarrassing because I'm no longer a Christian. You know, I would. It
What do
would
you mean
be
you're no
almost-
longer a Christian? What does that mean?
It means I used to be a Christian, Smokey.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were saying like now you suddenly stopped. Okay, all right. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Now that I'm no longer a Christian, it seems it would almost seem insensitive for me to say what I think was going on when that happened. So I'll just say yes, and I believe now that I was wrong. That I was the thing I was following was my own mind. I was telling myself what to do.
Okay. What was the question again, Tog? Yeah. What was it again, Matt?
Experience you haven't complained that you can't explain that you followed anyway, and there was some other part you found out later. I forgot exactly.
Tog. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I mean, I've had things that I've operated on that I've found out to be in need of extra information to come to a different conclusion. And I think if someone's being honest about their epistemological methodology, then they are going to be willing to change their beliefs and viewpoints based upon, the reemergence of new information or the emergence of new information.
Was that the last question?
That was the last question, and I'm not really looking anymore because God's Integrity Pathways, I'm sort of having a conversation with them. Always welcome to come on. GIP, we'll call you GIP. I don't know.
Are you guys going to be on for a little bit? Because this whole missing time thing kind of messed up my day a little bit. I do have some errands I have to get done before 5 p.m. But I can come back if I can get them knocked out real quick. I can always come back. I don't want to mess up the after show.
No. I'm probably going to shut this down, do an open panel, and you being a
Okay,
panelist,
all
I'll
right,
keep it.
okay.
I do only have 6 slots available.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, yeah.
If
no
you've
worries.
got 10 on yours, we could go to yours. But
I
then
do.
You're
I have 10
but
on
then
mine,
you're in
yeah.
charge, and I don't like you in charge when I'm streaming on my channel, right? Because you could be a cunt.
Well, that is fair. I'll give that to
I'd rather take the
yeah.
hit and have 6. But
Well,
yeah.
I'll tell you. Why don't we just do the 6 and you can just cycle them in and out or whatever. I get it. I get it. I understand. Yeah. That's
But anyway, yes, shout out to God's Integrity Pathways. I'm complicated. Smokey, I'll tell you, I don't know. Agnostic doesn't really cover it. I don't want to say atheist because I don't believe in this and that. There's an awful lot to me. My wee girl, she's 8. She's going through all of that now, Catholic stuff. So we talk about God a lot, and I'm happy with her to do that and supportive of it. And I don't know. I'm a complicated mess, and you can't put it in a label. You're welcome to join and have a conversation. But you said you don't join panels. You only do streams on your channel. So I don't know. Is that being a little afraid? Even Smokey came here,
Yeah, I mean, he has joined panels before. Maybe he's talking about atheist panels. I don't know. But whatever, it's fine.
Well, you're welcome
It's
on.
good to see you, Isaac. Shout out to Isaac, God's Integrity Pathways. Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for popping in.
That is way easier to say. Isaac, nice to meet you. I'm Robbie.
There you go.
More than welcome to come on anytime and have a chat. And as I say, we will be dropping this. Does any of you, I was going to say, Smokey, you don't have mods. Willie, do you have mods? Can you drop the link in without me having to put something?
I'm not even looking at the.
Yeah, you're
chat,
not even
but
looking.
did
Right,
you give
anyway,
me mods.
Let me just see. Right, this'll do. Boop, 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 boop. There. That's the link. If anyone wants to join, as I say, limited to 6. We'll be closing this down and bringing it back up again in 5-10 minutes. Yeah, that's about it. I don't know when I'll go live again. We'll see. If anyone wants to host debates and are happy with my moderation, feel free to reach out. Emails somewhere in the doodly doos. And
What link did you want me to post? I got confused.
you were
What
too
is it
slow.
again?
I did it myself.
Okay, good, perfect.
Just didn't want people complaining about me using my keyboard, so loud.
Clickety clack.
Right.
Do you have anything that you want to close with, Smokey, before you go?
No, I think we kind of covered all of it. No, yeah, I think we kind of got to the point that I was hoping to validate and prove on the stream. So yeah, no, we're good. I'm good with it. Yeah.
Well, I
Brilliant.
think I did too.
Okay,
Well,
I'm
you
glad
keep-
that
you keep
everybody
thinking
thinks
that
it's a win.
reasonably.
I'm
I would
glad
like
that
to
both
pick
of
this
you
up at
think
some.
it's a win, because then everybody wins, right?
Well, Freeman,
Yeah,
you're welcome.
I would
anytime.
like to get further into your.
People are
messianic
piling into the
prophecy sometime.
backstage, so I'm going to end the stream and then
Okay,
right.
bye everyone.
Well, that's the end of that one. And Smokey, great job, dude. I guess the one that the live stream they started after this one was the one that I partook in, and Halsey and Will Freeman were there at first, and I guess they wanted Halsey to question me, but I dropped in for a specific reason. And Halsey didn't stay long once she started asking questions. She took off rather quickly, and then Will Freeman didn't want to hang around either, so that's okay. We all know what they've got to offer. But my conversation there at Math Pigs went okay. And I wanted to discuss the question, is it reasonable to believe? And I just wanted to show that it's reasonable not to believe that there's a God. It's unreasonable not to believe that there's a God. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when we get into the scientific aspect of this, you guys handle all the philosophical stuff so beautifully. But when we look at the science, and this is what blindsides them and puts them on the defensive and makes them start to stutter and backtrack. When it comes to abiogenesis, the creation of life, all life is cellular, every bit of it. And every cell is alive until it dies. Every cell, every new cell is alive until it dies. Or until it reproduces and becomes young again. But the thing about this is they tell us that life evolved and that eventually a cell evolved. And the only problem with this, we have never once observed a cell that just self-formed. It doesn't happen. Neither can we make them form in the laboratory. Cells do not self-form. We know everything it takes to create life. We can throw all of these ingredients together and do anything to them you want to do them under any atmosphere that you want to give them, and you cannot bring them to life. It just never works. Neither have they ever been observed to self-form. So the idea that they try to convince you of is that billions of years ago, it took 1 billion years for them to keep trying to fall together before they were finally successful, and one fell together. But what they say is a whole population of them fell together, when we can't even get one to fall together now. And then all of a sudden, all of them at the same time just woke up and started replicating and metabolizing. Now that's a cute little story, guys, but that's all it is. It's a bedtime story that's never been observed, never been recreated, never, ever, ever. So the very first step it takes for abiogenesis to be true, and that is the formation of a cell, because every life is cellular. It's either a single-celled organism or a multi-celled organism. Nothing else is life, according to the consensus of scientists. And then the number 2 step to go from abiogenesis, the creation of that first cell, to the creation of the first multicellular life. There had to come a time when the single cell organism gave rise to the multicellular organism. And that simply does not happen. Every single-celled organism brings forth only a single-celled organism. And every multicellular organism brings forth another multicellular organism, such as a human being, or a dog, or a cat. So these are the things that make it absurd to believe that there's not a God. It's highly reasonable. It's entirely reasonable to believe that a life, an invisible, all-powerful life, created life on the planets. You see, we can't give what we don't have. I have the DNA of a man, and my DNA was passed down to my children, but I cannot pass down to them traits that I do not possess. Now, you and I, we have consciousness. A rock apparently doesn't have consciousness. Where is consciousness going to come from if the universe is not conscious? Now, if the universe is conscious, if it can think, if it can logic, then you got something there. If it's alive, you've got something there. Then it can pass on life, intelligence, consciousness, etc. But I don't see scientists proclaiming that the universe is alive. Probably would be because that would make the universe a god, wouldn't it? A being with principles and a plan. Now, I say God is an invisible entity with a plan that's omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. A dead universe can't pass these things on, guys, which makes it entirely reasonable to believe in a God and entirely unreasonable to not believe that there's a God. And then you have the Christian God. Now, the great thing about our Christian God is you can get to know him. You can have a relationship with this Christian God. And that's exactly why the Christian God created you. So that he could share and enjoy a relationship with you, his creation. Unfortunately, they didn't want to pursue that avenue of thought. And you can't really blame them because they have no answer for this. They have no answer at all. So this will take your room full of atheists and it will either make them shut up or boot you or change the subject. They're going to do one or the other, you can bet. And in my case, they forced the change of subject. And of course, I could have walked off, but I hung out and I tolerated it for a while, and I answered to their questions and etc. Corrected their many wrong things that were being said, and stood like a man. But this is a conversation that I'm going to try to have with them on my channel, so the subject can't be changed sometime. We'll get us a table full of atheists and see what they do with it. So I just wanted to share that too. Again, let me say to thanks, Peter, for telling me I was muted. I'm glad I was able to fix that. So, yeah, you're right. Smokey won that in the first couple of minutes. There's no doubt about that. You did a great job, Smokey. And I look forward to more. Keep up the good work. and sometime drop by. We'll have this conversation sometime. Look forward to it. So with that being said, I don't know if JG's back yet or not. I guess I could try to put something else on, but I think I'll just jump down and let JG. I'm expecting him to be back, and we'll see what's up. I'll just jump down and we'll wait for JG to put something on and see what else is going on this evening. I'm a little bit under the weather. Pardon me for that. But I'll talk to you guys later. And I'll be checking back in from time to time to make sure that to see where Jay's back and what's going on. So thank you, Jay, for letting me go ahead and finish this for everybody. You guys have a wonderful day. God willing, I'll see you in a bit. Bye-bye.